All right, everybody. Hello. Hopefully, everybody is doing well. Okay, hold on. Remove that. There we go. Save changes. Okay, sorry. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the In Liberty and Health podcast, episode number 444. Man, these days are just flying by anymore. My guest will surely back me up on that when you got little kids that they take up a lot of your time, and it's very good time spent. So hopefully everybody's doing well out there in the Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, verse, wherever. Today we're going to talk about the great rug pulls of 2025 because there were definitely a few. My buddy Nuke had said, I want to say it was on my stream when we did the New Year's stream at the beginning of the year. He said 2025 is going to be the year of the rug pull. And yeah, it definitely was. Before we get into the rest of today's show, please make sure you go to all the links below where you can find my guest, everything he's got going on, everything I've got going on. Of course, tigerfitness.com. Use code Kyle at checkout or go to tigerfitness.com/Kyle M. Should take you right there. And of course, Fox and Sons Coffee. And without further ado, let's get into it. And welcome back to the show, my dear friend Niko House. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, man. You ain't never lied, dog. These days are flying by. Flying by.
Yeah.
Man, every day. You know, I got two in the house. Well, I got three in total, but two. I got a newborn. I got a 1 year, 8-month-old, and Lord baby Jesus. It's a competition every day. The two can work my goddamn nerves. I'm trying to tell you. And it's like they're working in tandem with each other. I swear to God, bro. People don't believe me. I'm like, yo, I really feel like my two babies are working together to annoy us. Like one will start crying. It happened this morning. One started crying. She was cool, bro. My Nikki is her name. She was just chilling. And then my baby boy, Lachesis, he just and next thing you know, she just starts going crazy. It was like a competition. I was like, are you kidding me? You were perfectly fine. And then he starts crying. Now it's a problem. And then my oldest, all of a sudden, oh, I want attention now too. Since everybody else is crying and getting attention, it's crazy, bro.
Yeah, you know, my wife and I were, I forget where exactly it might have been like Walmart or a mall somewhere a week or two ago, and we're walking around and like my daughter and another kid made eye contact. My daughter was screaming, and then the other kid started screaming. I'm like, it's like they know. They're like, oh, wait, that's a good idea. I should scream.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do this, man. Let's see what we can get from this. Yep. It's kids, man. They're way slicker than what people give them credit for. It's the more you have in the house, the more you learn. It's like y'all little motherfucker, y'all smarter than what y'all pretend to be, and it's annoying. My son has figured it out. Like he's at the stage, so he's like 1 year, 8 months, and everybody knows how smart he is. And he understands everything, but he also knows like what are we going to do. Because we're not exactly sure exactly how much he does and doesn't understand, and he knows that. And he understands everything in 2 languages. Yeah, exactly. Basically, he walk up here high in his power level. He's like, yeah, what you going? Like he does, bro. The other day he unlocked the door. My wife locked the kitchen door so he wouldn't be running in and out messing with his sister. So he just waits till she turns around and unlocks the door and walks out. And he just does a slick ass smile that he does every time he knows you to crack the cookies. Yeah, what's up? Yeah, I know. Yeah, I unlocked it. Now what you gonna do now? What's next? If the cage doesn't work, like nothing works. Yeah, I unlocked the door, and I've been knew how to do this. Basically, is what he was looking at me. Yeah, I just was waiting for the right moment to show you, bro. There's nothing that stops this kid from doing what he wants, which is a problem in a house full of shit. Where it's like everything we put up high, and it doesn't matter because he also is tall enough to get whatever the hell he wants to. It's a whole problem, and then basically we spend half our day like just running around this little boy, like running behind him. It's crazy.
Yeah, my God. Yeah, and my wife and I plan to have another one. And I'm already kind of like contemplating, I'm like, wow, if they're anything like me, they're gonna be a little Hellraiser. When I was younger, I was definitely a Hellraiser, but like as I got older, I calmed down a lot more. But I'm kind of hoping my daughter and my hopeful future son will both kind of take after my mom, and be a little bit more chill because even my wife's like, yeah, if they're anything like you when you were a kid, this is gonna be a fucking problem. I was like, well,
it's gonna be multiplied, bro. It's gonna be multiplied. Like it's just it is what it is. Because I thought that I in my heart, and so I believe that was like a little Hellraiser. Me and my brother both. That's what I believe. And my mom was like, no, y'all were like mischievous, but like when she met my son, she was like, oh, this little motherfucker's on a different level. Y'all were never this bad. I was like, I know. And she's like, and he's like aware of it. He's conscious of what he's doing. So yeah, I know. I feel like it's because we never gave him the iPad and the iPhone. I feel like he's punishing us for it at this point. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna make y'all give me the damn iPad. Because he be wanting to play with our phones all the time. He goes up and messes with his stuff. And he starts acting like he knows what he's doing. For all I know, he does know what he's doing. He knows what he's doing with the controller already, so I wouldn't be surprised. Like he spends all his time, he spends a lot of time watching us. And when he observes something, he learns how to do it really fast.
Yeah.
So I'm like, why don't y'all let us use the phones? Okay, fine. So he'll like, if we take the phone from him, what he does, like he'll run, like start taking balls at the Christmas tree and start throwing them bitches. Like, hey, okay, so you're not gonna let me play with it? Fine. And I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, it's crazy, bro. It's crazy. Trying to get work done. Yeah, I know like when you go to work, sometimes I know at this point you're like, whoo, yep, time to go to work. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yesterday my wife had went up to my in-laws house or her parents' house, and I came home, I'm like, oh, this is like I finally get to just play guitar. I like started cleaning the house and stuff, and then I'm like, okay, now I can play guitar. I don't have to worry about my wife coming and be like, oh, can you hold the baby for a little bit? And like, not that I don't want to, but it's like sometimes like I want to give all these things attention and I want to play here for a little bit, but I got to be fair to her because she's with her all day. So like I come home, it's quiet, it's just me and the dogs. I'm like, all right, this is cool. But yeah, exactly. So
this is the one moment of the whole goddamn week. That's the crazy part, right? And you thinking about something. Of course, when you like before you have your kid, you're like, okay, I know it's gonna take a lot of time, but like, how much time could a baby really take? They just sit there and they use the bathroom. And then when nobody tells you that girls actually seemingly use the bathroom more than boys, and they burp and they fart more than boys. So like it's a whole thing with girls. Like my girl is just in Portuguese we say sem vergonha. Like she's not embarrassed at nothing, bro. She just starts farting out of nowhere. We're like, what the lunches was that you? Like, because we like grown man, like she letting them things go.
Oh yeah. Yeah, my wife and I figured out that if we put my daughter up like this, instantly just burp, lets it rip.
Sometimes I just carry her just so she can let her air out. I feel like you really be crying sometimes because she has like a bunch of air built up and she really needs to let it go. And sometimes she hits you with the double whammy. She's just burn. I'm like, for real, bro. And then my son starts laughing. I'm like, yeah, you better not, dog. I was like, because sometimes he'll just start trying to imitate her. He started doing that recently. She'll start crying. He'll go, I'm like, don't you start. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, cap that shit.
Okay. Yeah, cut that shit because he knows what he's doing, man. It's funny as shit. And I don't know what we would do without my oldest son for real because he keeps my other son occupied whenever we're at the baby. It's like, oh my God, bro, what would we do if you weren't here? Like, bro, he's about to have like the Christmas of a goddamn lifetime. He doesn't even know it yet because we would not have survived this last 2 months without him.
Oh, well, that's awesome. Awesome stuff. Bro, we could talk about parenting stuff all day, but I really wanted to talk to you about some of the rug pulls that were going on. So the first one that I know you probably have the most insight into would be Zoran Mamdani. It was interesting because they like the establishment Democrats kind of gave him every lifeline to succeed, despite the fact that they probably didn't want him to win and they were going all in on Benjamin Netanyahu's lawyer. The first thing they're asking a dude in a New York mayoral debate is, are you going to go visit Israel? And it's like, right now, nobody cares about, like, everybody's like, fuck Israel. But of course, all our politicians on both sides want to do that. And then he gets in and it's like a completely different tune. So, like I said,
I don't know if you can call it a completely different tune. It was just, I'm not going to go to Israel. And everybody's like, yeah. I'm like, hold up. Like, that's our bar now? Holy shit. We are cooked. Like, maybe he just really doesn't have maybe he just really doesn't want to go to Israel. You ever think about that? I mean, I would want to go to Israel right now, especially at that moment, whenever you didn't know at any point, like war could pop off because of its beef with Iran. And everybody at that point was really believing that Iran was going to attack them or they were going to attack Iran. But yeah, like that just lets you know how far our bar has fallen. Like not going to Israel means you are pro-Palestine. And he rode that wave.
Yeah. And everybody, it's so funny because I get to see this from both perspectives, obviously being like in Southwestern Pennsylvania, all like my boomer MAGA friends and family are like, oh my God, look, this Muslim's taking over New York. And then they would always post a picture of the Twin Towers to say, America, you forgot. And every time I'm like, look, I could understand this if he was like from somewhere in the Middle East and his parents he's from Uganda.
Like, and he's Desi. He's not even Arab, right? Like, he's from a Desi Indian background. And he's from Uganda. Like, nothing to do with each other. All those things are and he's not even like a hardcore Muslim. Like he's Muslim in the same way, like Chuck Schumer's Jewish, right? Like these people aren't really like they're Jewish in name only, in a sense that like I like to use my privilege to get whatever I want, and if you challenge me on that, then now you're anti-Semitic, right? It's the same thing with Mamdani. Mamdani, bro. One of the strangest things that I like that no one ever talks about is how this. You noticed on Twitter, people were linking his like eating with his hands to him being Muslim, and it was the strangest thing ever because that has nothing to do with each other. Those two things are completely and totally unrelated. That actually comes from his Ugandan ancestry because that's what they do in Africa. And not everybody, obviously, not everybody in Africa nor Uganda is Muslim. But that's even if you are like Christian, you're still doing the same thing. Muslims are actually notably clean. It's like they're like super duper clean to the point where you can't even pray if you're menstruating. Like you're not allowed. Yeah, you're not allowed to pray if you're menstruating. Like they're that clean. So, but he kept allowing people to connect those two and like leaning into it. And at that point, people should have known it was a grift. People, because it was that, right? And it was like letting people loosely connect the fact that he's a Muslim and letting people believe that would automatically presume he would be pro-Palestine and he wouldn't throw them under the bus. Or rather than being pro-Palestine, more specifically being anti-Zionist. Well, I'm a Muslim and I said I wouldn't go to Israel and therefore I'm pro-Palestine. And people believed it. And whenever the signs started popping up, like whenever he started lying off the back, right? We want to talk about the rug pull. One of the first things he did was he said, I don't want billionaire money. I'm not going to take billionaire money. And then he found that there's a super PAC in his name that took billionaire money, not only from New York billionaires, but specifically from billionaires in California. And he was just pretending as if he didn't know, even though the whole world was talking about it. But then people like myself were getting attacked. Whenever I'm like, isn't this billionaire money? And isn't this a super PAC spending money in his name? People are like, well, he's not spending the money. I said, well, I mean, not for nothing, but like if somebody tried to do that with Bernie back in the day, he would automatically call it out and be like, I don't want that money. We don't want any super PAC money, period. He said that. Mamdani just, which is peculiar because every other time someone tried to mislead people about a position of his or criticize him in a way that was untrue, he would immediately take to the media to challenge them. But in that case, he did not. And that was a huge clue that no one wanted to believe because they're like, well, he's not taking the money. I'm like, well, he's kind of taking the money though, because they're spending the money on him and he knows it.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of typically how they do a lot of lobbying. It's just like, oh, well, we can't give directly to you. So that just happens to be a super PAC that may have your name on it, and that's going to benefit you. So we're going to do that. And on top of that, I didn't know he's taking money from billionaires out in California. But it's, the bigger question there is like, what the fuck does California have to do with New York for the mayor?
Investments, bro. It's bankers and Wall Street people and Silicon Valley. All that's in the real estate developers or those who have interest in any of those things, right? You want to make sure that whenever you do business in New York, that he's going to be friendly to you, that his policies are going to be friendly to you. And obviously, in my opinion, that lets me know that you know something that we're unaware of. And whenever I had no idea how much, what's his name? Alex Soros was investing in Mamdani since the beginning. And it was like, okay, the Workers' Family Party getting behind him wasn't surprising. I did know how much Soros donate to, both of the Soroses donate to the Workers' Family Party, but I was like, well, that's kind of like a no-brainer. Of course they are. DSA getting behind him, I know about their connections to the DSA too, but that also wasn't surprising. What I found out later was that like Soros' Jewish organization directly was supporting Mamdani. Alex Soros's, which explains a picture that they took that was taken before he even won, because he had already. So you're telling me you don't want billionaire money, but you've been working with the billionaires entire time and you were hiding it, and people were still hopeful after Soros posted that picture. People were like, and what does that mean? It means that he's a misleading, conniving, duplicitous piece of shit. Like, are we not? You know what I'm saying? Like, well, he said he wasn't going to work with billionaires, and he's like holding one hand in hand. Without explanation, right? He has not provided an explanation for that. So what am I supposed to do with that? I can only draw a conclusion from the conclusion that there is to be drawn, that you're lying and that you lied and that you were refusing to give us a reason because the reason is going to make you look bad. And every day he's showing us who he works for, and it ain't us. You know what I'm saying? Like with MAGA, it's the same situation with Trump. We're
I'm glad
learning
you're
more
going
and
here.
more every day. We're learning more and more every day. You know what I'm saying? Like if I was a MAGA base, I'd be pissed. I don't, and it seems like that's the case because it's low. I mean, he's actually hitting historically low approval ratings. He's in the Bush category now, and people,
Yeah.
it's bad. It's getting bad.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of my friends who would call themselves, I don't know if they would call themselves plan trusters. Like, there's people who legitimately call themselves plan trusters. I'm like, I don't know how you guys are still on this train. I had one person who I don't think he's a bad guy, but this was back in, I want to say August, when Trump had met with Putin and they had like a 2 hour thing. He's like, oh, if something happens out of this, are you finally going to trust the plan? I'm like, all right, if something happens and it's good, I'll be the first one to admit I'm wrong. I'm not going to trust the plan here, but I'm open to something happening. And here we are. Literally, it was like 2 weeks after that, more sanctions on Russia, and
Yeah.
we're just still all this stuff going. And then what happened this past week? They had another 5 hour meeting, and generally they come out with the same conclusion every single time. We just can't, oh, it all went well, but we still have more room to go. And it's like, okay, well, you guys are going to have to drop the security guarantees because clearly that's a red line for Russia, and you're going to have to ban NATO
Yeah.
membership. But there's one figure here that always keeps coming up and seems to sabotage these talks. And that one figure, and it's the same deal with Venezuela, Marco Rubio, every single time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Europe, generally speaking, like just they always come in and they just come in with these. Well, we need to make sure that we can guarantee that we can put military assets in place to ensure that they know. No, that's a non-starter. I thought we already made that clear. Well, then we just can't agree with this. Then why would we come here? Because y'all knew that was a red line from the beginning. Right. Because effectively, okay, so it isn't NATO directly invading, it's just NATO indirectly invading. It's the NATO countries giving military assets to Ukraine. And, I do feel like there's this sense that that NATO's done with Zelensky, specifically. Not done necessarily with the war, but they are done with Zelensky because his face is just, he's just worn out his welcome. Nobody believes anything he says anymore. So I believe that explains the whole corruption scandal, because otherwise they would just keep looking the other way. I mean, this is probably one of 50 corruption scandals that should have been exposed in the past, 3 years, but they chose to expose it now, right around the time of these Russian talks. I do believe that Trump does want to end to the Russia-Ukraine war because it's making him look bad. But then I think it just goes back to what we already know. Trump is not in control of shit, and it's time that people accept that. And I mean, once again, I will be the first to admit the Trump of 2020 is not the Trump of 2016. The Trump of 2016, I can understand how people will be gullible enough to quote unquote trust the plan, because shit, when you're looking at how his rhetoric followed with North Korea versus how it ended, which was North Korea and South Korea getting along with one another, I can understand how people would be led to believe that trust the plan was a good course of action, or trust the plan was a good course of action. But now, bro, I can see why his numbers are in the tank with George W. Bush, because you can't tell them apart from each other. I can't tell him apart from Kamala Harris. Outside of the social justice warrior policies, and even Kamala really isn't all that good on that. But I really believe it feels like, to me, every night he goes to sleep, he calls Kamala up. They start pillow talking about what shitty policies he's going to do the next day. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, I've noticed this since even before he got elected and sworn into office, was that um, it's so crazy that Democrats have like DEI and whatever programs that people always talk about for blacks, transgenders, and people like those for the Democrats, and then for Republicans, it's all about Jews. It has to be, you can't criticize Jews or else we're going to throw you in jail. There was just that thing today where Pam Bondi said we're going after extremists, and I'm sitting there looking at it like, okay, people probably think this is going to be like Antifa or radical leftists or something like that. But what it's really going to be is just people who don't like Israel. that's all who it's going to be.
That's what it normally is. It is going to be Al Qaeda. We make them presidents. We don't put them in jail, right? Like, that's what's crazy to me. Yeah, bro. I don't know if you noticed, that week that Mom Donnie got elected, right? You remember all the Twin Tower meetings, which we already explained was weird. But then within that same week, within 7 days of each other, Trump invited Jolani, for those of you who know, the president, dictator, former Al-Qaeda leader, former ISIS leader in Syria right now. He invites this guy. This dude was literally an Al-Qaeda leader. He invites him to the White House, and all of a sudden, the Twin Tower memes just go away. They just disappear. And I'm like, hold up. but he's actually Arab. He's actually Muslim. He's actually a terrorist. He actually is part of Al Qaeda. And all of a sudden, well, it's cool. Well, no, why?
The U.S. had a bounty on his head at one point.
Bro, he had a bounty up until the day after he met with Trump. It was bro. It was up. Even whenever we had when Trump and Israel and all of them helped put him in power, he still had a bounty on his head. And then whenever they met with Trump, he had because what happened was I think right after that he had went to the UN. He was giving those speeches at the UN or sitting down with the leaders of the UN. So he had, I'm guessing that's probably why they had to lift off the bounty because like somebody maybe was like, hey man, we about to get this motherfucker right now. So yeah, so it was like the day he met with Trump. Within that time frame, they got the bounty taken off. But yeah, all the memes disappeared, bro. I'm like, this is, bro. You almost feel like you're going crazy when you watch it happen in real time because you're like, are y'all fucking kidding me? Y'all were literally just throwing out literal Twin Tower memes, and the moment that an Al-Qaeda, you have like the perfect opportunity to be as bigoted and racist and presumptuous as you want, right? Like you got the green light, like,
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what am I gonna say? Like, this motherfucker is Al-Qaeda, and he's coming to New York to speak at the UN and to meet with the president, and y'all like, yeah, but it's Trump, man. We can't embarrass him like that. That's cult personality, dog. That like it's a different level of cult personality. Because even when you like get this, y'all like being racist and bigoted and presumptuous and all that shit. And then the moment you actually get the opportunity to do it, you're like, well, nah, because Trump said it was cool. Like, remember when Trump was talking about how Muslim culture is amazing whenever he went to the UAE?
Yeah.
You know that?
Yeah, actually.
I was like, holy shit, what happened to we hate Sharia law? Because effectively, the majority of the UAE, they all practice Sharia law.
Right.
And it's like, no, they have amazing culture. That's why it's so peaceful here. No, it's peaceful there because we don't we don't destroy their countries. And there's a whole, thing behind that. But yeah, but like then he come back to the US. Well, that and all his people were supportive of that, of him saying that. And then when they come back to the US, it's like, oh, Muslims are the problem. And I'm like, hold up. Didn't you just say Muslim culture is actually amazing? And actually, if you so one of the things, I lived in North Carolina, I went to UNC, and if you know about Research Triangle Park, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, there's so many damn Arabs and Muslims there, and those are some of the most peaceful and prosperous areas in the state. Mostly because of the culture, they work together, they contribute to the economy massively, and like no one has a problem with them there. And that's a conservative state. Actually, it's kind of weird because Muslims oftentimes end up in conservative states, and no one cares because they don't cause any problems. In fact, they help everybody. You know what I'm saying? Bro, you know how long Muslims have been like dominating Texas? Like they've been in Houston since what, they've been like, coming to Houston in huge numbers. So like 2010, 2011. And no one knew about it. I only knew because my ex was Palestinian and she had a bunch of cousins that lived in Texas. And I found out through them that like, they're like, oh no, yeah, we have a huge community of Muslims here. I'm like, in Texas? And it's not a problem? She's like, no, not really. And then we saw this beef with the governor and talking about how they want to expel the Muslims out of Texas and how they're invading. I'm like, they weren't invading Texas 10 years ago, but now they're invading Texas. The same people.
Yeah, because it could be a hot button topic right now. You get people all riled up, and ultimately they don't do anything about this. The problems that they claim. It's one pattern I notice is that like immigration is kind of like the Republicans' racism, where Democrats always say you have to vote for us and we're going to fix all the racism. Republicans say, well, if you vote for us, then we're going to fix immigration. Ultimately, they never do anything about either one.
Yeah.
And one thing you brought up is,
if anything, I would say both of them make the situations worse. I would argue that both parties make the situations worse, actually. Because then like the Kamalas of the world trying to be president. You're like, why? Well, because she's black. Well, no, she's not really. Well, then you're racist. It was like, well, no, what's racist? Her racist ass policies. And then you want to make her the president. And then you get Trump. We're going to attack. You know how we're going to solve the immigration problem? We're going to actually destroy Venezuela to make more immigrants coming. Oh, and also we're gonna attack Mexico. If you give me the opportunity, we're gonna do that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is exactly where I was going too, is that it was funny. Trump at his talk at the UAE, and the only reason why he, wouldn't talk shit about Muslims in UAE is because, well, we could sell those guys weapons that they could use to kill the Yemenis, and we don't like the Yemenis either. So fuck it, everybody wins from their perspective. he was ranting against the, as he called it, interventionalists, which nobody actually used that word. It's just interventionists.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was denouncing them at the UAE, and then now here we are, a couple months later, and oh well, we have to go kick Venezuela's ass because of drugs. But Juan
Yeah,
Hernandez
supposedly.
got a full pardon. That
Yeah.
Trump in his first administration had a bounty on him for drugs. I can't square these things.
Bro. Yeah. Like, I mean, dude was found guilty. Like, found guilty, given 45 years. And it was like, bro, I remember when I read the article, a DEA agent was like, nah, Trump's insane for giving this dude a pardon. You know it's bad. When a DEA agent, which is usually, they're the participants, they're usually facilitating all the corruption regarding drug trafficking in the US and these, like a DEA agent was like, nah, dog. He should have never been pardoned. I can't believe this shit happened. Like, that's crazy. And he's like, well, I just feel like that the Biden administration set him up. I'm like, well, that's weird because like you were the one who, like, it was through your administration the first time. The trial ran forever. Actually, the investigation, the trial, because these things usually take time because they had to get him on conspiracy for drug trafficking. So I mean, bro, it's like when you talk about a rug pull, and it's like they're doing these people, the Mom Dinas of the world, the Trumps of the world, they are doing a rug pull in which like we've never seen. It's like I'm gonna do the complete and total opposite of everything I promised, and I'm gonna be exactly who I said I wasn't gonna be. Like Biden, we expected to go to war like this. Honestly, I expected things to ramp up in Venezuela with Biden, and they honestly tried to. It just didn't work out. They tried to disrupt the elections and intervene in that regard, but it didn't work out for them. So then Trump comes and is like, we're actually just gonna bomb the shit out of boats with and kill people extrajudiciously, and we're gonna try to start a war. Like, I mean, we're getting word from his administration, from Congress, people that they could have boots on the ground any day, that they can start strikes any day. What is that gonna do? They're trying to overthrow the elections in Honduras right now. That is not, it's been successful, but it always leads to high immigration from Honduras into the States because it gets ugly quick in Honduras. Like, even the situation in Nigeria, what's hilarious is, I don't know if you read, but Trump, after basically threatening to go to war, or at least threatening to put boots on the ground in Nigeria to stop the Christian genocide, he actually temporarily paused all visas from Nigeria to the US. I'm like, wow, didn't you just say it was like super dangerous for them? And he's like, yeah, man, we're gonna solve that by putting boots on the ground, causing more problems, and telling no Christians from Nigeria that allegedly are getting genocided, which, by the way, if you go look at the numbers, it's actually more Muslims that have been killed by these Muslim terrorist groups that are funded by the US than Christians, if people don't know that. Yeah, I know, right? I know, I can't believe it. But that's what's happening, which is also the reason why he doesn't want to give out the visas. Because when you start doing visas for refugees, they start looking at these numbers and more information begins to come out. And I also think you're going to look into, people are going to start looking into the president, who is Tinubu. And Tinubu is a fucking drug trafficker, literally. He's from Chicago. Like, he lived in Chicago, got a fake diploma under a fake name. The U.S. helped facilitate it and then made him the president of Nigeria. And that's one of the and if you actually go on Twitter, you'll see a bunch of bots like engaging in pro Tinubu propaganda, which you don't ever see from X. Like, you don't ever see them promoting any African leader who's actually challenging the empire, because he's not. So he's inviting the U.S. in. He wants the U.S. to be there. And it's also because of the AES situation. But my point is that Trump is he's like, oh, we want to save Christians. And he's like, okay, well, let's run to your spot. Oh, hold on, well, really quick, just let's slow down there, guys. What I meant was, we want to help Christians by putting boots on the ground and shooting at people and protecting all your resources to make sure that Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger can't get up in there. That's what it really meant. Y'all can't come over here, though. That's too problematic. Like, it's crazy, bro. I can't, like, even when I was like, oh, well, maybe he's gonna let Christians in. No. Even that, like, the thing that you would, like, he would be altruistic in helping the religion of the people that he says he wants to help. Nope, not even them. So it's like, okay, I don't know exactly what your policy stances are anymore. I don't know. And that should be problematic for everybody. That's especially if you supported him, gave money to him, put in labor hours, knocked on doors for him and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one other thing about Venezuela that just was peak irony was that Maduro had been essentially complying with the United States when it came to like deportation flights and pretty much everything else. And then Trump himself said, oh, yeah, they're willing to give us everything. but all of a sudden you keep blowing people up and you have all these warships and assets off their coast. They're like, all right, well, fuck it. We're not going to do any more deportation flights, which they did.
Yep.
My understanding is they did start accepting more. It's like, this is literally working contrary to your goal. And like everything you're doing right now is just fucking your own goal. And I don't know how people are
On
like
purpose.
this stupid that they can't see this.
Yeah, it's on. And Maduro's he's a chess player, dog. He's like, yeah, we'll accept him because he didn't want them to be sent to like Ecuador or where's the place that
El Salvador?
Was it Ecuador? El Salvador, yeah,
Yeah.
like where they were Venezuelans were being thrown in prison and they hadn't actually been found guilty of anything, or some of them actually were never connected to anything whatsoever. They're just being sent there. So it was like partially to make sure that Venezuelan citizens were taken care of, but also he's like, okay, we'll play ball. Yeah, go ahead, send them over. Because for Venezuela, they want more citizens to remain in Venezuela. It's better for them, but it like gains Trump into believing or into having to react to that. Now it's like, well, so now you can't say that we're pushing back on your immigration policies. We're accepting responsibility for those who fled our country into yours. So what's your next move? Well, we're going to call you a drug lord, a narco-terrorist drug lord. But you're going to work with Noboa of Ecuador, whose family literally was found guilty of trafficking. They used bananas crates to traffic cocaine across the world and into the U.S. They found guilty of it. They know that about Noboa, and he became president because the U.S. Intervened in that election. Then you're going to support, you're going to give a pardon to fucking Juan Orlando Hernandez. Like, how am I the narco-terrorist dictator? Right? Like, bro, okay. Like, I just want you to know, and now it's going to be a big problem because what's going to end up happening if Trump starts conducting these strikes, it is going to be problematic because Russia has they just extended their oil deal with Venezuela, 15 years. Okay. Do y'all think that Russia is going to allow the U.S. to bomb Venezuela without consequence? Hell, do you think Iran's going to? Do you think China's going to? Because Iran's worried about the precedent, of course. China is worried about the money, of course. Russia is directly involved. I mean, like, probably the biggest partner with Venezuela right now is Russia. Right. I mean, that's not, and they like that whenever the U.S. greenlighted that CIA operation, bro, 2 days later, there was an explosion at Venezuela's largest oil facility. 2 days later, dog. Like,
and don't forget, Wagner forces were in there too, down in Venezuela.
And exactly. And that's because that's actually the facility that Russia had started working on refining the crude oil and started building up the operations. So like, do y'all think that shit's gonna fly if they just go on the floor? Because that's gonna be deemed as an attack against Russia. Because this ain't little oil, guys. This ain't a little bit of oil. This is game-changing oil. Like, this is, you're gonna have to now make a decision whether or not you're gonna stick to oil as the reason why your currency is valued at what it's at, or switch to lithium. But then you can't win that battle either. Why? Because China has the most lithium, and we're also friends with them. So what the fuck you gonna do? Like, you need to get along with everybody, and you're not willing to do that. So it's like we're waiting for the crash because the U.S. looks like they are flailing right now. Everything that we are witnessing is out of desperation. It's desperation. And that explains some of the erratic nature of Trump's move. It's not because of Trump. Yeah, he might be erratic, but it's the empire that's becoming erratic, in my opinion. Even with Mamdani, it's New York is like, a lot of people call it the capital of the empire. And it's like the empire in and of itself is just becoming erratic. They're like, we have to find another Trump, but like on the left too, because really the left, they've all screwed themselves. They needed a new face. Bernie wasn't going to work. I mean, I thought the fact he's too old. He betrayed his base too much. AOC has done fucking nothing, like nothing at all. I mean, and betrayed her base. There's too many sound bites of her betraying her base. Mamdani couldn't even, now he's done, in my opinion. He couldn't even wait to get in the office before he started betraying his base. And putting Jessica Tisch back in power was nuts. I'm like, hold up, he's pro-Palestine, but he's putting Tisch back in power. And Tisch was the one who sent the NYP after the college students for the pro-Palestine protests. The NYPD that was beating the shit out of pro-Palestine students. And then she went to speak at the ADL about how she was going to double down on her policies against anti-Semitism in New York, which we know means they're going to be more NYPD police officers beating the shit out of people who stand against Israel. So like, how is that pro-Palestine? That practically means you're going to shut down any discourse or anything contrary to what Zionists want in New York. Like, what? How do y'all feel like that's going to lead whenever he has to run again? Like, how do y'all feel like it's going to work? It's not. It's not going to work. But they're like, well, we need these faces. We need these faces. We need these faces. Who's the next Trump, Kyle?
JD Vance ain't got it.
He does not, bro. He's corny as shit. He is, bro. Like, everybody keeps talking about how I still can't believe he got his own Netflix series. That shit's wild to me. But JD Vance ain't got it. Marco Rubio is corny. Ted Cruz is going to have, bro. I believe that there's going to be a legitimate challenge to his legitimacy as a president. I believe they're going to because a lot of people are saying that Mamdani is going to be able to do it because like naturalization or something like that. It's going to be like a challenge for him. Obviously, it's going to be the Republicans challenging him. But if you challenge him on that naturalization clause, like then you're going to have to challenge Ted Cruz, regardless of whether or not he decided to he renounced his Canadian citizenship. But like, and like it doesn't matter. So there's going to be challenges on both sides regarding that. So who is going to be the next up for anybody? It's just going to be one shitty candidate after another shitty candidate for both parties from here on out. And it's going to be in the revolts are coming, bro. Like they're coming, right? Like, am I the only one getting that sense? Like, because they're not going to be able to hide shit anymore.
Yeah. A lot of my friends on the right seem to think that Vance is the way, but he just doesn't have that. He doesn't have that charisma, right? Like Trump, you at least say is funny. He's charismatic. He has a way with speaking. JD Vance just comes off as like your, white bread politician that has his lines, and he seems competent, but he doesn't have that funniness to him.
Factor. He don't have the it factor, man. He don't have that. He's not charismatic. He doesn't have a way with words, and then when he tries, it sounds like he's forcing it, and it's just like they don't really hit. The jokes don't really hit. Like with Trump, I give it to Trump. Sometimes he be saying shit, bro, and he just be going off the cuff. And you're like, boy, you sound ridiculous right now, but that shit is hilarious. And it makes it seem like he's doing it on purpose. But what's funny to me is that I know he's not doing it on purpose, and that's what actually makes it hilarious. Yeah. So this dude's freestyling at the podium in front of the whole fucking world. And he's like, yeah, man, Jolani is a handsome guy, really handsome guy, soft hands, rough pass though, soft hands with a rough pass. I think we've been a little bit too hard on him, but man, really, really handsome, tall, right? Tall, just a good, strong leader. Wait a minute, what? It's like, are you trying to you're not gonna say pause, nothing? Are you trying to pretend you're trying to pretend to come off as gay and it's like to see how far you can take it before somebody stops you? Like, that's what it sounds like. But then when you actually go back and you listen to some of his other stuff, and then you actually see that thing about Bubba. Now you start to
some weird shit.
Maybe he wasn't joking. Maybe they're not joking. We should have been taking. Did you ever hear that Arnold Palmer conversation that he had?
Oh yeah, he was talking about. Didn't he say something about him having a huge dick?
Basically,
something.
Everything he's like, yeah, man. Everybody, when he walked in, everybody stopped. When he walked to the locker room, everybody stopped and looked. They admired. I'm like, wait a minute, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, you know what? You know what's hilarious too is that Arnold Palmer, I can't even say it. That airport, anyways, is like literally it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes up the road from where I work, and I'm flying out of there this Friday. So my wife and I are going to Florida this weekend. So it's first trip with the baby. I'm really looking forward to it.
That's dope. I'm terrified to take a trip with my baby.
Jesus.
Terrified, man.
Well, I've kept you a little bit past your time limit. So, Niko, I really, really appreciate everything you do. I always enjoy talking to you. It's always awesome, man. Where can everybody find you, support you, and all that good stuff?
You can find me on Twitter, on X, IG, at Real Niko House. You also find me on YouTube at For the People Podcast. And, of course, follow Hotspot at Hotspot on X. And on IG, it's at @hot_spot media. Go follow us there. We were finally able to remake our new hotspot after they kicked us off for. Actually, I'm pretty sure it was pro-Palestine post, but yeah, it was 200. We had like 200,000 plus followers. They're just like, boop. So we had to take them to court, and we actually won, but we had to start from scratch. Yeah, bro, it was like a year and some change. It was a bitch. And then we got to start from scratch. So
nice. Yeah. All right. Well, Yeah. Hell with all that stuff, dude. That's ridiculous. Niko, like I said, always good to talk to you. We're gonna keep the
Appreciate
show
you.
going. I really appreciate your time, brother, and let's definitely do another one soon.
For sure, bro. Talk to you soon.
All right. See you, man. All right, everybody. I guess we're gonna run an ad real quick, and then we will resume the rest of the show. All right, we're going to take a second today to chill and tell you about the show's sponsors, Tiger Fitness. Make sure you go to the link below to get all the supplements that I use day in, day out, and beyond. As I always say, you do not need supplements to become all jacked and tan or to progress in your health journey, but they could definitely be a useful tool in that respect. So, as you can see on tigerfitness.com, we got MTS Nutrition, Blackstone Labs, Ambrosia, HPN, Nutrix Research, America Labs, Alani New, Pump Chasers, there's Redcon One, Accent Sledge, plenty of different companies that pretty much have absolutely any supplement you could possibly think of: pre-workouts, fat burners, BCAAs, electrolyte mixes, you name it, it's on there. So go to Tiger Fitness through the link below. Use code Kyle at checkout to let them know that I sent you. Get your protein powder, you name it, anything that's going to help you stick to your diet and hopefully achieve your health goals. All right, thanks. Back to the show. All right, all right, all right. Awesome to have Niko on as always. Reach out to a few other people. Reached out to a few other people, and unfortunately, some of those other people were busy, just couldn't get back to me. So no big deal. But like I told Niko, we're gonna keep the show going. I actually wanted to read from the new National Defense Strategy or National Security Strategy. I apologize, and kind of give some comments on that. Maybe we won't read through the whole thing, but there's some changes. They did announce they were kind of pivoting away from Asia and we're going to start focusing on our own hemisphere, but we're going to cover that's a little bit, there's a little bit more nuance here. So let me pull this up here. The National Security Strategy for November 2025. So just to give a little bit of context, basically the US releases these documents every couple of years. It's basically how they're viewing their foreign policy now. So for the last, I want to say since about 2011, the US had been solely focused on what they called the pivot to Asia under Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, was instead of focusing on the terror wars, which had obviously started under George W. Bush and a little bit in the 90s, they wanted to start focusing on competition with China. And they had listed out basically China was number one, Russia was number two, Iran, North Korea, all them, as they would call it, the axis of resistance, were the next focus. So they just released a new national security strategy, and they're saying now that they're now more focused on our own hemisphere. So let's kind of read through some of this, and I'll give some commentary as necessary. And like I said, maybe I won't read the whole thing because there's quite a bit in here. So, my fellow Americans, over the past 9 months, we've brought our nation and the world back from the brink of catastrophe. Excuse me, and disaster. After 4 years of weakness, extremism, and deadly failures, my administration has moved with urgency and historic speed to restore American strength at home and abroad and bring peace and stability to our world. No administration in history has achieved so dramatic a turnaround in so short a time, which, let's be honest here, it's not really a giant change. Um, a lot of the wars are still going, which I do want to give Trump credit for at least engaging in negotiations with Russia. But I do question quite frequently how sincere these engagements are, as we're still sending weapons, intelligence, and everything over to Ukraine. And now Trump literally just tweeted a article out about how striking Venezuela and being at potential war with Venezuela is actually about combating Russian influence, which Niko and I were talking about that a little bit earlier. So it doesn't seem very sincere when they're in these negotiations. But starting on my first day in office, we restored sovereign borders of the United States and deployed the U.S. military to stop the invasion of our country. We got radical gender ideology and woke lunacy out of our armed forces and began strengthening our military with $1 trillion of investment, which is funny because one thing you might remember that I talked about early on was them talking about the whole Pentagon budget of goosing the Pentagon budget up to $1 trillion. I'm sorry, actually, the point I was trying to make is that they were talking with Russia and China about potentially having their military budget. But then, of course, in usual Trump fashion, we do the exact opposite. And then we literally raised the Pentagon budget to the largest budget it's ever been. And then also one thing that I wanted to talk about was also the budget of ICE, where they're spending now 4 times the amount on ICE than the Biden administration was spending, and we're still not getting mass deportations like were originally promised. So just like go back to the whole rug pull point. Um, we rebuilt our alliances and got our allies to contribute more to our common defense, including a historic commitment from NATO countries to raise defense spending from 2% to 5% of GDP. We unleashed American energy production to reclaim our independence and impose historic tariffs to bring critical industries back home, which they ultimately did not do. In Operation Midnight Hammer, we obliterated Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity. I declared the drug cartels and savage foreign gangs operating in our region as foreign terrorist organizations. And over the course of just 8 months, we settled 8 raging conflicts, including between Cambodia and Thailand, Kosovo and Serbia, the DRC and Rwanda, Pakistan and India, Israel and Iran, which they did not settle, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, and Armenia and Azerbaijan, and ending the war in Gaza with all living hostages returned to their family, which they did not end the war in Gaza. America is strong and respected again, and because of that, we're making peace all over the world, which they're not. In everything we do, we're putting America first. What follows is a national security strategy to describe and build upon the extraordinary strides we have made. This document is a roadmap to ensure that America remains the greatest and most successful nation in human history and the home of freedom on earth. In the years ahead, we will continue to develop every dimension of our national strength and will make America safer, freer, greater, and more powerful than ever before. Signed, Donald Trump in November of 2025. So that's the whole beginning there. Of course, it's just kind of usual Trump fashion. Everything is the greatest thing I've ever done. It's the greatest thing you've ever seen. And, we're just doing the absolute amazing thing, just the most amazing thing ever. So we just know that that's a lot of that stuff is just objectively not true. So, anyways, continuing on. So the table of contents, they have what is the American strategy, how the American strategy went astray, quote unquote. President Trump's necessary and welcome correction. What should the United States want? What do we want overall? And what do we want in and from the world? What are America's available means to get what we want? And then the strategy principles, priorities, regions. And then under A, Western Hemisphere, B, Asia, C, Europe, D, the Middle East, E, Africa. So, you know what? I think I'm just going to read through the strategy and go through all the hemispheres. You guys can kind of read some of this. And I think it's kind of clear that what they're talking about is just going to be a bunch of kind of political nonsense. Okay, so we are here. Let me make sure. I don't want to keep everybody too long, and I don't want to be here reading this all day either. So here we are, the strategy. Let me make sure this is where I want to start. Yes. Okay. Sorry. Don't want any dead air. The strategy principles. President Trump's foreign policy is pragmatic without being pragmatist, realistic without being realist, and principle without being idealistic, and muscular without being hawkish, which just, once again, is a bunch of just gargle nonsense, and restrained without being dovish. It is not grounded in traditional political ideology. It is motivated by, above all, what works for America, or in 2 words, America first, which, as we could really see, just isn't true. As Niko and I were kind of talking about, the situation in Venezuela is clearly going to lead to more immigrants coming from Venezuela and flooding the country and potentially bringing drugs with them, which is hilarious. And as you bomb more and more boats, you're sending a clearer and clearer signal that it's not safe to be in Venezuela. So, obviously, the correct course of action would be to close the border and not do these things, but it seems like we're going to get neither. The foreign policy in Somalia, which I've tweeted about a lot, thanks to Dave DeCamp. They bombed Somalia now. I think it's over 102 times. So they've set a record amount of, or they've done a record number of strikes in Somalia just this year alone. Like, actually, Trump's drone strike policy in Somalia, they conducted more drone strikes this year alone than the entirety of Joe Biden and Barack Obama's presidencies, which is just absolutely nuts. President Trump has cemented his legacy as the president of peace, which he is not the president of peace. And anybody telling you otherwise is just ignorant of the overall foreign policy. In addition to the remarkable success achieved during his first term with the historic Abraham Accords, President Trump has leveraged his deal-making ability to secure unprecedented peace and 8 conflicts throughout the world over the course of just 8 months of his second term. This is already just repeating what they said earlier about all the peace deals. Stopping regional conflicts before they spiral into global wars that drag down whole continents is worthy of the commander-in-chief's attention and a priority for this administration. A world on fire where wars come to our shores is bad for American interests, which they are correct. President Trump uses unconventional diplomacy, America's military might, and economic leverage to surgically extinguish embers of division between nuclear capable nations and violent wars caused by century long hatred. President Trump has proven that American foreign defense and intelligence policies must be driven by the following principles. Focused definition of the national interest. Since at least the end of the Cold War, administrations have often published national security strategies that seek to expand the definition of America's national interests such that almost no issue or endeavor is considered outside of its scope, which I don't think the Trump administration is really any different. But to focus on everything is to focus on nothing. America's core national security interests shall be our focus. Peace through strength, which I just want to rant about this saying peace through strength for a few minutes. Every time someone says peace through strength, it usually just means some ambiguous neocon fucking interventionist garbage where it literally just means nothing. Because what they always say, oh, peace through strength, that's bombing Iran. How is bombing Iran peace through strength? You're literally committing war crimes. You're bombing a sovereign country under the guise of peace, which there was this old meme, which everybody might remember, but it was somebody holding a sign that says, fighting a war or fighting for peace is like fucking for virginity, which just really sums it up. Anyways, peace through strength. Strength is the best deterrent. Countries or other actors sufficiently deterred from threatening American interests will not do so. In addition, strength can enable us to achieve peace because parties that respect our strength often seek our help and are receptive to our efforts to resolve conflicts and maintain peace. Therefore, the United States must maintain our strongest economy, develop the most advanced technologies, bolster our society's cultural health, and field the world's most capable military. Predisposition to non-interventionism, which is just already bullshit. In the Declaration of Independence, American founders laid down a clear preference for non-interventionism in the affairs of other nations and made clear the basis. Just as all human beings possess God-given equal natural rights, all nations are entitled by the laws of nature and nature's God to a separate and equal station with respect for one another. For a country whose interests are as numerous and diverse as ours, rigid adherence to non-interventionism is not possible, which is just ridiculous on its face. Yet this predisposition should set a high bar for what constitutes a justified intervention. So we can bomb Iran, we can bomb boats off the coast of America, or actually not off the coast of America, off the coast of Venezuela. We can commit mass murder in Somalia. We could bomb the Yemenis. What else? We can potentially, fight a war in Mexico, which there's a justified case of stopping cartels and cartel violence in the United States, but I don't think performing drone strikes on our southern border is necessarily the way to do that. It's just ridiculous on its face. So they haven't set a very high bar for intervention, if we're being completely honest. I wonder how much of the strategy is reflected in Project 2025, regardless of how it's going to be adhered to. It seems like this administration uses policy as an excuse, not as a reason. Yeah, pretty much. They're going to do, when they say America first, it's generally just an ambiguous feel-good term that sounds really good, and it does sound good, to give people what they want to hear so that way they could do whatever they want. Which is just always hilarious because it's always like Israel first, then Ukraine, then Taiwan, and then Japan, and Argentina, and all these other countries that are allies. We can give them all this money, but when it comes to actually doing things that would put America first, we can't seem to figure out how to do that. Anyways, flexible realism, which just means we're going to do what we want anyways. U.S. policy will be realistic about what is possible and desirable to seek in its dealings with other nations. We see good relations and peaceful commercial relations with the nations of the world without imposing on them democratic or other social changes that differs widely from their traditions and histories. Unless you're Venezuela, Honduras, Nicaragua, Cuba, then you have to do what the U.S. says, or Nigeria, all the countries that Niko and I talked about. We recognize and affirm that there is nothing inconsistent or hypocritical in acting according to such realistic assessment or in maintaining good relations with countries whose governing systems and societies differ from ours, and even as we publish like-minded friends to uphold our shared norms, furthering our interests as we do so. Primacy of nations. The world's fundamental political unit is and will remain the nation state. It is natural and just that all nations put their interests first and guard their sovereignty, which the US doesn't respect this for other countries, obviously. The world works best when their nations prioritize their interests. The United States will put our own interests first, and in our relations with other nations, encourage them to prioritize their own interests as well. We stand for the sovereign rights of nations against the sovereignty sapping incursions of the most intrusive transnational organizations, and for reforming those institutions so that they assist rather than hinder individual sovereignty and further American interests. Sovereignty and respect. The United States will unapologetically protect our own sovereignty, which I'll get into this in a second. It's just ridiculous on its face. This includes preventing its erosion in transnational interests and international organizations, attempts by foreign powers and entities to censor our discourse or curtail our citizens' free speech rights, lobbying and influence operations that seek to steer our policies or involve us in foreign conflicts, unless you're Israel, and the cynical manipulation of our immigration system to build up voting blocks to loyal for foreign interests within our country. The United States will chart our own course in the world and determine our own destiny free of outside interference, unless you're Israel. If you're Israel, then you can interfere in U.S. domestic politics all you like. Anti-BDS laws, I cover this ad nauseum. There was even, and I want to bring this up with Niko too, but I know he had a little bit of a time limit. With the whole hurricane relief thing that happened back in, I want to say it was September. I might be wrong about that, but there was a giant meltdown over the fact that they literally had anti-Israel bias or content in their addendum when it came to giving people hurricane relief. And there were literally people justifying it, saying, well, they have anti-white bigotry in there too. Like, give me a fucking break. The idea that the US has to consult Israel as to whether or not we can decide who gets fucking aid or not is just asinine. There can be no talks of American sovereignty until you completely eliminate every single one of those laws. There is zero reason Israel should have any interest in our domestic policy. There's zero reason why the US should have an influence in Israel's domestic policy. And I'm focusing on Israel because this is the only country that gets to do that. No other country in the world gets to do that to the US. If it was China, I would feel the exact same way. No foreign country should have any say in what our American citizens can say or do in their own country. It is ridiculous that Israel gets to decide that. So I just don't want to hear any talk about sovereignty from the United States until we have deportations and until we've completely eliminated all Israeli influence from domestic policy. It's just absolutely asinine. Balance of power. The United States cannot allow a nation to become so dominant that it could threaten our interests. What does that mean, our interests? We will work with allies and partners to maintain global and regional balances of power to prevent the emergence of dominant adversaries. As the United States rejects the ill-fated concept of global domination for itself, which it pretty much does, we must prevent the global and, in some cases, even regional domination of others, which what they're saying here is basically Russia and China can't have their own sphere of influence. This does not mean wasting blood and treasure to curtail the influence of all the world's great and middle powers. The outside influence of larger, richer, and stronger nations is the timeless truth of international relations. This reality sometimes entails working with partners to thwart ambitions that threaten our joint interests. Pro-American worker. American policy will be pro-worker, not merely pro-growth, and will prioritize our own workers. We must rebuild an economy in which prosperity is broadly based and widely shared, not concentrated at the top or localized in certain industries or a few parts of our country, which I think is actually good policy and it's overall right. I do like that, actually. Hey, 143 or 1439315. Sorry, messed up your name. The Economist forecast for 2026 is intriguing. Is there something I could Google to find that? Because I will talk about that today. If you could tell me what to look up, and I can maybe just do like a quick breeze through the article. I want to finish up the national security strategy, but put down in the comments what I could look up, and maybe we'll talk about that today. Fairness. Sorry, let me get this. From military alliances to trade relations and beyond, the United States will insist on being treated fairly by other countries. We will no longer tolerate and can no longer afford free-riding trade imbalances, predatory economic practices, and other impositions on our nation's historic goodwill that disadvantage our interests. As we want our allies to be rich and capable, so must our allies see that it is in their interests that the United States remain also rich and capable, which they don't offer this same extension to a lot of the Latin American countries. In particular, we expect our allies to spend far more of their national gross domestic product on their own defense to start to make up for the enormous imbalances accrued over decades of greater spending by the United States. Competence and merit. I was going to skip this, but it's the last one. American prosperity and securities depend on the development and promotion of competence. Competence and merit are among our greatest civilizational advantages. Where the best Americans are hired, promoted, honored, innovation and prosperity follow. Sorry, where the best Americans are hired, promoted, and honored, innovation and prosperity follow. Should competence be destroyed or systematically discouraged, complex systems that we take for granted, from infrastructure to national security to education and research, will cease to function. Should merit be smothered, and America's historic advantages in sciences, technology, industry, defense, and innovation will evaporate. The success of radical ideologies that seek to replace competence and merit with favored group status would render America unrecognizable and unable to defend itself. At the same time, we cannot allow meritocracy to be used as justification to open America's labor market to the world in the name of finding global talent that undercuts American workers. And every principle and action, America and Americans must always come first, which I actually do like that last sentence. I just don't think they're very serious about it, because they're still talking about bringing in all these H-1B workers and doing legal immigration. And plus, they're still trying to fight this war with Venezuela, which will ultimately bring in more Venezuelan migrants, and they're going to apply for refugee status, and then they'll probably become naturalized citizens if they continue down this path. So, going to priorities, the era of mass migration is over. Who a country admits into its borders and what numbers in from where will inevitably define the future of our nation, which is actually correct. Any country that considers itself sovereign has the right to, and duty to define its future. Throughout history, sovereign nations prohibited uncontrolled migration and granted citizenship only rarely to foreigners who also had to meet a demand and criteria. The West's experience over the past decades vindicates this enduring wisdom. In countries throughout the world, mass migration has strained domestic resources, increased violence and other crime, weakened social cohesion, distorted labor markets, and undermined national security. The era of mass migration must end. Border security is the primary element of national security. We must protect our country from invasion, not just from unchecked migration, but from cross-border threats such as terrorism, drugs, espionage, and human trafficking. A border controlled by the will of the American people, as implemented by the governments, is fundamental to the survival of the United States as a sovereign republic. You know what? I think we're gonna skip some of this. I want to go to the different hemispheres. There's a whole lot here. So let me see how many pages is all the zones. Geez, they really laid out a lot of the stuff in their own hemisphere. Okay, promoting European greatness. All right, let's go up to, where is it? Economics, ultimate stakes. Let's start with the Western Hemisphere. So we're in the regions now, and let's yeah, probably some of them probably will be, more than likely, if I'm being honest. The Western Hemisphere, the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. After years of neglect, the United States will reassert and enforce the Monroe Doctrine to restore American preeminence in the Western Hemisphere and to protect our homeland and access to key geographies throughout the region. We will deny non-hemispheric competitors the ability to position forces or other threatening capabilities, or to own or control strategically vital assets in our hemisphere. This Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine is a common sense and potent restoration of American power and priorities consistent with American security interests, which actually does make sense. I wish they were a little bit more serious about this, because they always say it's China, but China isn't like the main player in Venezuela. They are the largest trading partner with those countries, but they're not like a military partner, and I don't think they ever were. Like Russia and Iran have sent arms to Venezuela, but if I understand correctly, I don't think China has ever sent any arms to Venezuela. So why aren't we saying this about Russia? Don't know. Anyways, our goals for the Western Hemisphere can be summarized as enlist and expand, which is funny. We will enlist established friends in the hemisphere to control migration, stop drug flows, and strengthen stability and security on land and sea. We will expand by cultivating and strengthening new partners while boasting our own nation's appeal as the hemisphere's economic and security partner of choice, which right now they're just not doing that in Venezuela. enlist. American policy should focus on enlisting regional champions that can help create tolerable stability in the region and beyond those partners' borders. These nations would help us stop illegal and destabilizing migration, neutralize cartels, near-shore manufacturing, which this is a key component right here. Near-shore manufacturing. We'll get into that a little bit more. And develop local private economies, among other things. We will reward and encourage regions, governments, political parties, and movements broadly aligned with our principles and strategy. We must not overlook governments with different outlooks with whom we nonetheless share interests and who want to work with us. The United States must reconsider our military presence in the Western Hemisphere. This means 4 obvious things. Okay, before we get into those 4 quote unquote obvious things, nearshoring. Notice how they said the tariffs are for onshoring jobs. They're not. Manufacturing jobs have gone down. I believe actually every single month since Trump took office. This has been an ongoing trend for years now, is that the US manufactures less and less and less. Warwick Powell and I, if you go back to the episode that him and I did together, Warwick Powell and I covered how the US is actually still the second largest manufacturer in the world. But we manufacture weapons. We don't manufacture goods that make our lives better. We don't manufacture that amp. We don't really manufacture the guitars that are right here. Like I think down in Nashville, there's like the Gibson factory. And then in Texas, they make some. There's all sorts of stuff. Alex Patino, good to see you, brother. British cigarettes, troglodytes, dodgy wankers. I love it. Good to see you, dude. We don't manufacture that much stuff. Like, okay, the Jerichos I have are made in Texas, though, which is pretty cool. But the US, like the tariffs from the US aren't even onshoring jobs again. What they're looking to do is, and I think Jose and I actually may have covered this in a previous show, where they're looking to friend shore. They're looking to near shore. So instead of getting made in China, you're going to get made in Taiwan. You're going to get made in South Korea. You're going to get made in Japan. You're going to get potentially, if they could do it, made in Cuba, made in Vietnam. You're going to get made in Venezuela, made in Cuba, made in Nicaragua, made in Honduras. Anybody that's considered an ally to the United States, those jobs are not going to be coming back here. As much as I would like that to be the case, I don't think it's going to happen. You would need to train a workforce, and you would have to pay that workforce quite heftily, because I'll tell you what now, making $100,000 a year in the United States ain't quite what it used to be. I remember when I was a kid, it used to be like, if somebody said they were making 6 figures, everybody would be like, yeah, like that's damn good money. Nowadays, if you make 6 figures a year in the United States, it's not quite as good as it used to be. It's definitely not anywhere near as good as it used to be. I'm about to cross that threshold personally, but like I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, when I was making like 50 grand a year 10 years ago, it was like, man, this went like far. Like I could afford things. I wasn't constantly underwater. And not that I'm like constantly underwater right now, but like I could definitely use a little bit extra change. You know what I mean? Now that, yeah, you're gonna have to pay people ridiculous amounts of money, and people are gonna have to stand for higher prices on stuff. Either that, or like the US is gonna have to subsidize some of this stuff or figure something out to bring those jobs back home. But more than likely what's gonna happen is that they're just gonna send the jobs to other countries that are a little bit more competitive on the wage side. Okay, so the 4 obvious things that is for our military presence in the Western Hemisphere. A readjustment of our global military presence to address urgent threats in our hemisphere, especially the missions identified in this strategy, and away from theaters whose relative import to American national security has declined in recent decades or years. A more suitable Coast Guard and Navy presence to control sea lanes, to thwart illegal and other unwanted migration, reduce human and drug trafficking, to control transit routes in a crisis. Targeted deployments to secure the border and defeat cartels, including where necessary, the use of lethal force to replace the failed law enforcement only strategy of the last several decades. And the last one, establishing or expanding access in strategically important locations. The United States will prioritize commercial diplomacy and strengthen our own economy and industries using tariffs and reciprocal trade agreements as powerful tools. The goal is for our partner nations to build up their domestic economies, while an economically stronger and more sophisticated Western Hemisphere becomes an increasingly attractive market for American commerce and investment. Strengthening critical supply chains in the hemisphere will reduce dependencies and increase American economic resilience. The linkages created between America and our partners will benefit both sides while making it harder for non hemispheric competitors to increase their influence in the region. And even as we prioritize commercial diplomacy, we will work to strengthen our security partnerships from weapon sales to intelligence and sharing, from weapon sales to intelligence sharing to joint exercises. So, as we could see, they're trying to do some of the stuff down in South America, specifically aimed at Venezuela, because once again, they wanted to have a regime change in Venezuela. Which one thing I kind of wish we would have gotten into a little bit earlier is what Niko's perspective is on how likely is that. As time goes on, I think they're kind of losing the edge there, where it's not quite as abundantly clear that the U.S. is going to be able to do what they want to do down in Venezuela, because they don't have the edge anymore. Back when you first deployed all these assets, I think it was very likely that they were going to strike. But over time, it's kind of like, all right, well, what the hell are we doing? The Marines and everybody aren't as motivated to do what they were once going to do. Expand. As we deepen our partnerships with countries with whom America presently has strong relations, we must look to expand our network in the region. We want other nations to see us as a partner of first choice, and we will, through various means, discourage their collaborations with others, which they just haven't done a very good job of. The Western Hemisphere is home to many strategic resources that America should partner with regional allies to develop to make neighboring countries as well as our own more prosperous. The National Security Council will immediately begin a robust interagency process to task agencies supported by our intelligence community's analytical arm to identify strategic points and resources in the Western Hemisphere with view to their protection and joint development with national, regional, or with regional partners. Non-hemispheric competitors have made major inroads into our hemisphere, both to disadvantage us economically in the present in ways that harm us and strategically in the future. Allowing these incursions without serious pushback is another great American strategic mistake of the recent decades, which really they have, but I mean, it's largely been the US's own fault that this has happened. The insane sanctions and all the military actions taken down in Latin America, there's like such a better way to do this. Hey, once again, why don't we give you preferred trading status? All the, Latin American countries, we want you to work with the US. So we're going to start giving you factories and jobs, and then we're going to completely remove all the tariffs, which I'm not saying this is perfect, but just an idea. We're going to make you our preferred trading partners, and we're going to set up all shop down there. We're going to quit importing from China, and we're going to be friends with all the Latin American countries. What would be so complicated about doing that? If you ask me, I don't think it's that complicated. I don't think it's that difficult, but apparently they just don't want to do it. So they would much rather fight a war instead. The United States must be preeminent in the Western Hemisphere as a condition of our security and prosperity, a condition that allows us to assert ourselves confidently where and when we need to in the region. The terms of our alliances and the term upon which we provide any kind of aid must be contingent on winding down adversarial outside influence, from control of military installations, ports, and key infrastructure to the purchase of strategic assets broadly defined, which there really haven't been any crazy military assets or installations down in any of the Latin American countries. Once again, China has a trading relationship with a lot of these countries. Russia may have sent weapons, but they never talk about that, which is just bizarre to me. Some foreign influence will be hard to reverse given the political alignments between Latin American governments and certain foreign actors. However, many governments are not ideologically aligned with foreign powers, but are instead attracted to doing business with them for other reasons, including low cost and fewer regulatory hurdles. The United States has achieved success in rolling back outside influence of the Western Hemisphere by demonstrating with specificity how many hidden costs in espionage, cybersecurity, debt traps, and other ways are embedded in allegedly low-cost foreign assistance. We should accelerate these efforts, including by utilizing U.S. leverage and finance technology to induce countries to reject such assistance. In the Western Hemisphere and everywhere in the world, the United States should make clear that American goods, services, and technologies are far better buy in the long run because they are higher quality and do not come with the same kinds of strings that other countries' assistance. That said, we reform our own system to expedite approvals, licensing, again, to make ourselves partner of first choice. The choice all countries should face is whether they want to live in an American-led world of sovereign interests or of sovereign countries and free economies, or in a parallel world where they're influenced by other countries outside of the world. Or on the other side of the world. Let me see if there's not really much else. I'll just go to the last paragraph. The United States must also resist and reverse measures such as targeted taxation and unfair regulation and expropriation that disadvantages U.S. businesses. The terms of our agreements, especially with those countries that depend on us most, therefore over which we have the most leverage, must be sole source for contracts for our companies. At the same time, we should make every effort to push out foreign companies and build infrastructure in the region. So this is the one I really wanted to get to, was to talk about Asia. Yeah, and I think it's probably true. Alex Patino, labor is more expensive in Latin America than China or India. I don't know how true that is necessarily anymore, because China has been increasing their prices more and more because of the talent that they have over there at this point, and because they are, once again, the manufacturing superpower of the world. They have all these factors, and then even not Steve Jobs or whoever's the Apple CEO now says that it's actually not cheaper to produce stuff in China anymore. India, yeah, maybe, because let's face it, the people in India are not as smart as the people in China, or at least in some parts of China. Depending on where you go at in Asia, there's going to be some less quality people, if you will. So, B, Asia, win the economic future and prevent military confrontation. Leading from a position of strength, President Trump had single-handedly reversed more than 3 decades of mistaken assumptions about China, namely that by opening our markets to China, encouraging American business to invest in China, and outsourcing our manufacturing to China, we would facilitate China's entry into the so-called rules-based international order. This did not happen. China got rich and powerful and used its wealth and power to its considerable advantage. American elites over 4 successive administrations of both political parties were either willing enablers of China's strategy or in denial, which maybe. The Indo-Pacific is already the source of over half the world's GDP based on purchasing power parity, and 1/3 on nominal GDP. That share is certain to grow over the 21st century, which means the Indo-Pacific is already and will continue to be among the next century's key economic and geopolitical battlegrounds. To thrive at home, we must successfully compete there, and we are, which is just, we have to compete over in the Indo-Pacific, 7,000 miles away, to be good at home. Okay. President Trump signed major agreements during his October 2025 travels that further deepen our powerful ties to commerce, technology, and defense, and reaffirm our commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific, which, once again, 7,000 miles away, South China Sea. America retains tremendous assets in the world's strongest economy and military, world-beating innovation, unrivaled soft power, and a historic record of benefiting our allies and partners. That enables us to compete successfully. President Trump is building alliances and strengthening partnerships in the Indo-Pacific that will be the bedrock of security and prosperity into the future, which is so funny because all these people who were so dovish on Russia-Ukraine somehow just like throw out all their preconceived notions that they have for the Russia-Ukraine war when it comes to China, which just to me never made any sense, because China obviously has its own sphere of influence. They don't have a military that projects power. They don't want to have a military that projects power because they're not worried about other foreign actors unless those foreign actors are in their hemisphere, which the US is, from Japan, which we covered on the last show, Taiwan, even Australia to a degree, South Korea, India to somewhat of a degree, although that's kind of a toss-up. They're all basically not outright hostile to China, but it's kind of like they have to walk a fine line. Economics, the ultimate stake. Since the Chinese economy reopened to the world in 1979, commercial relations between our two countries have been and remain fundamentally unbalanced. What began as a relationship between a mature and wealthy economy and one of the world's poorest countries transformed into one between near peers, even as, until very recently, America's posture remained rooted in those past assumptions. China adapted to the shift in U.S. tariff policy that began in 2017 in part by strengthening its hold on supply chains, especially in the world's low and middle income per capita GDP, $13,800 or less countries. Among the greatest economic battlegrounds in the coming decades, China's exports to low income countries doubled between 2020 and 2024. The United States imports Chinese goods indirectly from middlemen and Chinese built factories in a dozen countries, including Mexico. China's exports to low-income countries are today nearly 4 times its exports to the United States. When President Trump first took office in 2017, China's exports to the United States stood at 4% of GDP, but have since fallen to slightly over 2% of its GDPs, which, to be clear, Biden actually did continue Trump's trade war as well, which I'll talk about here in probably a little bit. China continues, however, to export to the United States through proxy countries. Going forward, we will rebalance America's economic relationship with China, prioritizing reciprocity and fairness and to restore American economic independence. Trade with China should be balanced and focused on non-sensitive factors. If America remains on a growth path and can sustain that while maintaining a genuinely mutually advantageous economic relationship with Beijing, we should be headed from our present $30 trillion economy in 2025 to $40 trillion in the 2030s, putting our country in an enviable position to maintain our status as the world's leading economy. Our ultimate goal is to lay the foundation for long-term economic vitality, which actually I think is overall a good idea. I don't necessarily think abandoning all trade with China is like the best idea. I wouldn't necessarily be against it or for it. It's kind of more like, all right, um, if that works in reality, okay. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Um, but I think right now maintaining good relations with China and having a trade partnership with China is a good thing, and it also prevents the U.S. from going to war with China, which a lot of like the Palantir-esque people and a lot of like the people in the Trump administration are really vying for. Importantly, this must be accompanied by a robust and ongoing focus on deterrence to prevent war in the Indo-Pacific. This combined approach can become a virtuous cycle as strong American deterrence opens up space for more disciplined economic action, while more disciplined economic action leads to greater American resources to sustain deterrence in the long term. Which, what do they mean by deterrence for China? Well, we're going to get into that. To accomplish this, several things are essential. First, the United States must protect and defend our economy and our people from harm, any country or source. This means ending, among other things, predatory state-directed subsidies and industrial strategies, unfair trading process practices, job destruction, deindustrialization, grand-scale intellectual property theft, and industrial espionage, which I hear people talk about this, but I never see any evidence of it. Threats against our supply chains that risk U.S. Access to critical resources, including minerals and rare earth elements, which a lot of those are over there in China, and they think that the U.S. thinks that they have an entitlement to that. Exports of fentanyl precursors that fuel America's opioid epidemic, which is in part due to both. Propaganda, influence operations, and other forms of cultural subversion. So I want to talk about this propaganda, influence operations, and other cultural subversion. It was so funny to me how people pointed out that TikTok is the one invading our young one's mind. And then usually you'd see a boomer in the same breath promote a video off of TikTok that's talking shit about the Chinese government, which just like that, it's too funny to me. You can't square these things. The other thing is a lot of the accounts on Twitter that are rage baiting and doing sorts of bullshit reporting, almost none of them were from China, which is hilarious to me. A lot of them were from India, which just, all like the Miller Lite masculinity accounts, they were all from India, which is just hilarious. Anyways. Second, the United States must work with our treaty allies and partners who together add another $35 trillion in economic power to our own $30 trillion national economy, together constituting more than half the world economy, to counteract predatory economic practices and use our combined economic power to help safeguard our prime position in the world economy, ensure that allied economies do not become subordinate to any competing power. We must continue to improve commercial and other relations with India to encourage New Delhi to contribute to Indo-Pacific security, which once again, we're talking 7,000 miles away, including through and continued quadrilateral cooperation, which once again, the Quad, with Australia, Japan, and the United States, the Quad. Moreover, we will also begin to align the actions of our allies and partners with our joint interest in preventing domination by any single competitor nation. The United States must at the same time invest in research to preserve and advance our advantage in cutting-edge military and dual-use technology with emphasis on the domains where the U.S. advantages are strongest. These include undersea, space, and nuclear, as well as others that will decide the future of military power, such as AI, quantum computing, and autonomous systems, plus the energy necessary to fuel these domains. Which you could get a lot of that from Venezuela, but instead we're going to try to fight a regime change war there. It's probably just going to create nationalist fervor in Venezuela, and people are going to fall behind Maduro. Additionally, the U.S. government's critical relationships with American private sector help maintain the surveillance of persistent threats to U.S. networks, including critical infrastructure. This, in turn, enables U.S. government ability to conduct real-time discovery, attribution, response, while protecting the competitiveness of the U.S. economy and bolstering the resilience of the American technology sector. Improving these capabilities will also require considerable deregulation to further improve our competitiveness, spur innovation, and increase access to America's natural resources. In doing so, we should aim to restore a military balance favorable to the United States and to our allies in the region. In addition to maintaining economic preeminence and consolidating our alliance system into an economic group, the United States must execute robust diplomatic and private sector led economic engagement within those countries where the majority of the global economic growth is likely to occur over the coming decades. So, once again, this is kind of getting back to the idea that they want to have more relations with a lot of the countries over there in Asia, which, like, the main kind of unsinkable aircraft carriers over there are the Philippines, which I did forget to mention earlier. The Philippines, Japan, South Korea, and Australia. And they would like India, but India is kind of like hot or cold, which it seems like India is kind of moving further and further away from the US. But at the same time, I think they kind of want to play both sides. America First diplomacy seeks to rebalance global trade relationships. We have made clear to our allies that America's current account deficit is unsustainable. We must encourage Europe, Japan, Korea, Australia, Canada, Mexico, and other prominent nations in adopting trade policies that help rebalance China's economy toward household consumption because Southeast Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East cannot alone absorb China's enormous excess capacity. The exporting nations of Europe and Asia can also look to middle income countries as limited but growing market for their exports. China's state led and state backed companies excel in building physical and digital infrastructure, and China has recycled perhaps 1.3 trillion of its trade surplus into loans to its trading partners. America and its allies have not yet formulated, much less executed, a joint plan for the so called global south, but together possess tremendous resources. So when they refer to the global south, they're talking about Africa. And um, it is true that China is really taking steps to advance the relationship with the global south. They've given a lot of low interest loans, forgiven loans, and helped build a lot of infrastructure down there to have access to some of like the cobalt, the lithium, and some of the other materials that are down there in Africa because they want that for their robust EV market and a lot of the EV infrastructure over there in China. Europe, Japan, South Korea, and others hold net foreign assets of $7 trillion. International financial institutions, including the multilateral development banks, possess combined assets of $1.5 trillion. While mission creep has undermined some of these institutions' assets of effectiveness, while mission creep has undermined some of these institutions' effectiveness, this administration is dedicated to using its leadership to position to implement reforms that ensure they serve American interests. What differentiates America from the rest of the world are openness, transparency, and trustworthiness, which is hilarious for them to say after the whole Iran situation. And Qatar, commitment to freedom and innovation and free market capitalism will continue to make the global partner, or will continue to make us the global partner of first choice. America still holds a dominant position in in the key technologies that the world needs. We should present partners with a suite of inducements, for instance, high tech cooperation, defense purchases, and access to our capital markets that tip the decisions in our favor. Okay, I'll skip through those next couple paragraphs. I'm going to go to deterring military threats. Our greatest disadvantages yet remain our system of government and dynamic free market economy. Yet we cannot assume that our system's disadvantages will prevail by default. A national security strategy is therefore essential. Deterring military threats. In the long term, maintaining American economic and technological preeminence is the surest way to deter and prevent large scale military conflict. A favorable conventional military balance remains an essential component of strategic competition. There is rightly much focus on Taiwan, partly because of Taiwan's dominance of semiconductor production, but mostly because Taiwan provides direct access to the second island chain and splits Northeast and Southeast Asia in two distinct theaters. Given that one-third of global shipping passes through the South China Sea, this has major implications for the U.S. economy. Hence, deterring a conflict over Taiwan, ideally preserving a military overmatch, is a priority. We also maintain our long-standing declaratory policy on Taiwan, meaning the United States does not support any unilateral change to the status quo in the Taiwan Strait. Which is kind of funny because it's almost like they kind of have one foot in and one foot out when it comes to how they want to talk about Taiwan, because They know that longstanding policy is the one China policy, that Taiwan is a province of China, but they don't want to recognize that, but they also don't want to say Taiwan's a country. We're back to strategic ambiguity. We will build a military capable of denying aggression anywhere in the first island chain, but the American military cannot and should not have to do this alone. Which is funny because now they're talking about building up a military asset chain basically in the Indo-Pacific or in the South China Sea. Our allies must step up and spend, and more importantly, do much more for collective defense. America's diplomatic efforts should focus on pressing our first island chain allies and partners to allow the U.S. military greater access to their ports and other facilities and to spend more on their own defense. And most importantly, invest in capabilities aimed at deterring aggression. This will interlink maritime security issues along the first island chain while reinforcing the U.S. and allies' capacity to deny any attempt to seize Taiwan or achieve a balance of forces so unfavorable to us as to make defending that island impossible. Which, once again, why are you concerned about defending Taiwan if you're not in favor of changing the status quo? Because the status quo is the one China policy. When you understand this stuff, it's kind of like they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. A related security challenge is the potential for any competitor to control the South China Sea, which right there, South China Sea. China should control the South China Sea because it's the South China Sea. This could allow a potentially hostile power to impose a toll system over one of the world's most vital lanes of commerce, or worse, to close and reopen it at will. Either of those two outcomes would be harmful to the U.S. economy and the broader U.S. interests. Strong measures must be developed along with the deterrence necessary to keep those lanes open and free of tolls, and not subject to arbitrary closure by one country. This will require not just further investment in our military, especially naval capabilities, but also strong cooperation with every nation that stands to suffer, from India to Japan and beyond, if this problem is not addressed. Given President Trump's insistence on increased burden sharing from Japan and South Korea, we must urge these countries to increase defense spending with a focus on capabilities, including new capabilities necessary to deter adversaries and protect the first island chain. We also harden and strengthen our military presence in the Western Pacific, while in our dealings with Taiwan and Australia, we maintain determined rhetoric on increased defense spending. Preventing conflict requires a vigilant posture in the Indo-Pacific, a renewed defense industrial base, and greater military investment from our allies and partners, and winning economic technological competition over the long term. So the rest of this is Ukraine, Europe, Middle East. I think I've gone for long enough. I will recommend everybody go check out the National Defense Strategy. I've breezed through it. Haven't completely sat down and read every last little word. I wanted to read the China stuff because I try to focus on China foreign, or the Indo-Pacific South China Sea foreign policy here. But of course, that is about all I wanted to cover today. So hopefully everybody enjoyed this kind of format where I do a lot of ranting and raving and maybe have a guest on for a little bit and then they peace out and I kind of resume all this stuff. But anyways, I think that's about all I wanted to talk about on today's show. So I'm going to go spend some time with the wife and daughter today, and then maybe with the rest of the family. Hopefully everybody enjoyed today's show. Go check out Niko's stuff at Real Niko House everywhere. Of course, A Common Crown will have new music very, very soon. It should be any day now we get our single back, which I'm very, 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 very excited to share with everybody. And yeah, I think that's it. So with that, go to the Great Megalodon, sign up for the Substack. Please consider becoming a channel member for the lowly price of $2.99 a month. It would mean a lot to me and goes a long way in supporting me and everything I do. And commentator on Twitter. And I think that's all for today. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. And until next time, take care.